For most of Hollywood's golden age, Maureen O'Hara was presented as something rare but safe, strong, yet respectable, fiery but contained, a woman audiences could admire without ever questioning the system that shaped her. But the truth was far less comfortable. Behind the Technicolor beauty and iconic romances was a woman who quietly became one of the most feared figures in the industry, not because she chased scandal, but because she refused to surrender her dignity. Long before Hollywood was forced to reckon with its past, Maureen O'Hara had already made a choice. She would not play the game. And that decision, more than any role she ever turned down, defined the rest of her life. Born in Ireland and trained in classical theater, O'Hara arrived in film with a confidence that didn't come from studios or publicity departments. It came from discipline, self-respect, and a deeply ingrained sense of personal boundaries. From the moment she appeared on screen, there was something different about her. She wasn't ornamental. She didn't shrink. She didn't soften herself to make others comfortable. And Hollywood noticed immediately. At first, the industry embraced her. She fit perfectly into the rise of Technicolor cinema, her striking appearance becoming synonymous with epic romances and dramatic intensity. She worked with major directors, starred alongside leading men, and quickly became one of the most recognizable faces of her era. To audiences, her career looked effortless. Behind the scenes, it was anything but. As O'Hara would later reveal, Hollywood made its expectations clear early on. Talent mattered, but compliance mattered more. Advancement often came with unspoken conditions. Doors opened faster for those willing to compromise themselves, and closed just as quickly for those who refused. According to O'Hara, these pressures were rarely explicit. They didn't need to be. The system operated on implication, suggestion, and quiet punishment, and Maureen O'Hara refused. She later said that from the beginning, she sensed something was wrong. Invitations carried undertones, conversations drifted where they shouldn't, offers came paired with expectations that had nothing to do with acting. She understood the message clearly, and she rejected it just as clearly. The consequences weren't dramatic. There were no public confrontations. Instead, projects vanished. Promising roles went elsewhere. Momentum slowed without explanation. The industry didn't need to threaten her openly. Silence did the job. At the time, this was simply how Hollywood worked. What made O'Hara dangerous was that she remembered. Years later, when asked why her career seemed to shift unexpectedly at certain points, she was direct. She said she refused to submit to inappropriate behavior. She said her refusal cost her opportunities. And she said it without bitterness, without exaggeration, and without naming herself as a victim. She framed it as a reality others quietly accepted. That honesty unsettled people. The tension between her public image and private reality reached its most volatile point through her relationship with legendary director John Ford. Ford was not just influential. He was untouchable. His films defined genres. His reputation was carved into Hollywood history. Working with him was considered a privilege. On screen, their collaborations produced warmth, romance, and enduring classics. Off-screen, O'Hara would later describe something far darker. In interviews given later in life, she spoke of Ford as emotionally volatile, manipulative, and cruel. She described a man who used humiliation as a tool, who asserted dominance through intimidation, and who targeted those who resisted him. These accounts were always framed as her personal experiences, not universal claims. Still, the pattern she described was disturbing. She recalled being belittled publicly, undermined without cause, and placed under constant psychological pressure. According to O'Hara, Ford's behavior toward her intensified over time, particularly as she refused to bend to his authority. She believed he saw her independence not as strength, but as defiance. One incident remained etched in her memory above all others. O'Hara later revealed that Ford struck her during filming, dismissing it as part of his directing method. In that era, such behavior was often excused, ignored, or normalized. Directors were geniuses. Actors were expendable. O'Hara rejected that logic completely. She refused to accept physical or emotional abuse as artistic necessity. What troubled her even more was the reaction around her. No one intervened, no one questioned it. The hierarchy was understood, and Ford sat at the top. O'Hara realized then that the system protected power, not people, and that realization changed her forever. In later reflections, she suggested, carefully, without certainty, that Ford's behavior may have been fueled by unresolved personal fixation, not love, but something closer to possession, control without consent, authority reinforced by resentment. Whether that interpretation was accurate or not, the effect was undeniable. Power was used as punishment, and still she did not break. Instead of retreating, O'Hara held her ground. She continued working, but only on terms she could live with. She rejected roles she found demeaning. She refused to alter her accent, her identity, or her values to fit Hollywood's mold. Each refusal carried a cost, and she accepted it knowingly. Over time, the industry labeled her difficult. O'Hara understood exactly what that meant. Difficult didn't mean unprofessional. It didn't mean unreliable. It meant uncontrollable. It meant unwilling to submit. It meant dangerous to a system built on silence. She noticed how easily narratives shifted. Confidence became arrogance. Boundaries became hostility. Integrity became a liability. She watched as other actresses, equally talented, were rewarded for compliance, while those who resisted quietly disappeared. She didn't judge them. She understood the fear. Hollywood in the 1940s and 1950s was not designed to protect women. It was designed to consume them. Survival often required compromise. But compromise was something she could never bring herself to accept. Her Irish upbringing instilled in her a fierce sense of dignity. Certain lines once crossed could never be uncrossed, even when warned explicitly that refusal would stall her career. She chose loss over submission. She believed the warnings, and she refused anyway. That choice shaped everything, while audiences continued to see her as a symbol of strength on screen. Few realized how much she fought to remain visible at all. Opportunities came less frequently, roles narrowed. Yet she endured, balancing career pressure with personal responsibility, particularly as a mother. Motherhood grounded her. It sharpened her resolve. She was no longer just protecting herself. She was protecting the example she set. Her personal life, however, was not spared hardship. Early marriages brought instability and emotional strain. Still, she persisted, raising her daughter while navigating an industry that punished independence in women. Through it all, she refused to rewrite herself for acceptance. It wasn't until later in life that she found true stability. Her marriage to aviator Charles Blair marked a turning point. Blair was not impressed by fame. He was not threatened by strength. He offered partnership instead of control. With him, O'Hara found something Hollywood had never given her: peace without conditions. Encouraged by Blair, she stepped away from the spotlight. This was not retreat, it was reclamation. She chose privacy over applause, autonomy over admiration. When tragedy struck and Blair was killed in a plane crash, O'Hara endured another devastating loss with quiet resilience. Soon after, she faced a serious health crisis. Once again, she survived. As the decades passed, Hollywood began to change. Stories surfaced, patterns emerged. Voices long dismissed were finally heard. The language changed, but the behavior O'Hara had described remained painfully familiar. Without fanfare, history began to catch up to her truth. What once cost her roles was suddenly recognized as courage. Her honorary Academy Award, granted late in life, was framed as a celebration of her career. But for those who understood her story, it symbolized something deeper: an unspoken acknowledgement, a delayed validation, not just of her talent, but of her endurance. Maureen O'Hara passed away at 95, having outlived many of the men who once wielded power over her. She left behind more than classic films and unforgettable performances. She left behind a warning Hollywood ignored for decades: that silence protects power, that integrity carries a price, and that refusing to kneel can change history, even if it takes generations to be recognized. Hollywood remembers her as a romantic icon, a fiery redhead, a symbol of strength. But those who look closer see something far more unsettling: a woman who refused to be owned, a voice that spoke too soon, and a legacy Hollywood tried and failed to forget.